Good morning, children. Today I am going to start a new chapter, that is weather, climate and adaptation of animals. In this chapter, we will know about what are the differences of weather and climate and how do the animals survive in such changed environment. Now, first of all, we will know what is weather. What is weather? So children, the day-to-day condition of the atmosphere at a place with respect to the temperature, humidity, rainfall, wind speed, etc. is called the weather of that place. So, what is weather? The day-to-day condition of the atmosphere. The day-to-day condition of the atmosphere at a place with respect to what? With respect to the temperature, humidity, with respect to the temperature, humidity, rainfall and mainly the wind speed. So, these are responsible for the changes in the weather. That is the change, day-to-day change in the condition of the atmosphere at a place with respect to the all these factors is called the weather at that place. Then, humidity. Humidity is the measure of the moisture present in the air. Humidity is the amount of the moisture which is present in the air. Now the weather is generally not the same of any 2 days. The weather is generally not the same on any 2 days, or you can say 2 weeks or even months also. It is not the same. Then the weather reports are prepared by the meteorological department. The weather reports are reported by the meteorological department. Who collects data on the basis of temperature, wind, etc. and makes the weather prediction. So, these are collected by whom? These are collected and prepared by the meteorological department. So, you can say that the weather reports are prepared by meteorologists and the department is known as the meteorological department who collects data on the basis of temperature, wind, etc. and makes the weather prediction. Then the maximum temperature of the day, that is the maximum temperature of the day generally occurs in the afternoon. In the afternoon. It is generally in the afternoon, the maximum temperature. Then, what about the minimum temperature? The minimum temperature occurs in the early morning. The minimum temperature generally occurs in the early morning. So, when is the maximum temperature recorded? It is recorded in the afternoon, whereas the minimum temperature is recorded in the early morning. Then the time of the sunrise and sunset also changes during the year because of the change in climate. The time of sunrise as well as the sunset. It is not throughout the same. It also varies. It also changes because of the change in the climate. Now, all the changes in the weather are driven by the sun. The sun actually decides the changes in the weather. Now, we will know about the climate. What is climate? What is climate? The maximum temperature of the day occurs generally in the afternoon, while the minimum temperature occurs generally in the early morning. This we had discussed just now. And now the average weather pattern taken over a long time, that is, you can say 20 to 25 years, is called the climate of the place. What is the climate of the place? The average weather pattern. It is the average weather pattern. The climate is the average weather pattern which is recorded or which is taken over a long time. That is, you can say about 25 years. It is called the climate of the place. Now, what is the differences between the climate and the weather? First of all, we will know about the differences between the climate and the weather. The differences between the weather and the climate. Then the term will be more clear to you when you will understand the differences. What are the differences between the weather and the climate? So, day-to-day condition of the atmosphere at a place is known as the weather. That is, day-to-day condition of the atmosphere. At a place is known as the weather. Weather is the day-to-day condition. Okay, it is the day-to-day condition of the atmosphere at a place. But on the other hand, the climate is the average weather pattern. Average weather pattern recorded or taken over a long time. Then what is the next difference? That is, the second one is it can vary over very short period of time. It can vary over a short period of time. Whereas it does not vary in short period. The climate does not vary in short period. It does not vary in short period. Then what is the next difference? It cannot force adaptation in the organism. It cannot force adaptation. You will learn now what is adaptation. It cannot force adaptation in the organism. Whereas in case of climate, it forces adaptation. It forces adaptation in the organisms. It forces adaptation in the organisms. So what are the differences between weather and climate? That is, the day-to-day condition of the atmosphere at a place is known as the weather, whereas average weather pattern taken over a long period of time is known as the climate. And whether it can vary over a short period of time, but it does not vary in short period of time, then it cannot force adaptation in the organism, whereas climate can force adaptation in the organism. Now children, we will see what are the different elements which decides the weather. So now we will try to understand the meaning of the different elements that define the weather at a given place. So what are the weather elements? The weather elements which decides the weather at a given place. Now first one is temperature. First one is temperature. It is actually an indicator of the degree of hotness or coolness of the air. It is the indicator of the degree of hotness or coldness. Hotness or coldness of the air. So temperature on the earth averages about 15 degrees Celsius at sea level, but varies according to the latitude, elevation, season and time of the day. It can also range from a record high of 58 degrees Celsius to a record of minus 88 degrees Celsius. And the temperature is generally highest in the tropical region, whereas lowest near the poles. So now it is clear now what is temperature. It is the indicator of degree of hotness or coolness of the air, and it varies from about 58 degrees Celsius to minus 88 degrees Celsius, and it is maximum near the tropical region, whereas minimum near the poles. Now second one is the humidity. Humidity. What is humidity? It is the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere. It is the measure of the amount of water vapor present in the atmosphere. And the most common measure of humidity is the relative humidity. It is, we can know the humidity with the help of the relative humidity. What is relative humidity? It is actually the amount of water vapor in the atmosphere. Whereas the maximum amount of the water vapor present in the atmosphere. Amount of water vapor which is present in the air and the maximum amount of the water vapor which can be present in the air. It gives the, when it will be divided with the maximum amount, it will give the relative humidity. So what is relative humidity? Relative humidity is the amount of water vapor which is actually present in the atmosphere divided by the atmosphere's maximum water vapor holding capacity. That is the maximum water vapor holding capacity. When it will be divided by maximum water vapor holding capacity, it will give you the relative humidity. That is, in order to find out the relative humidity, we will divide the amount of water vapor which is present in the atmosphere with the total holding capacity. What holding capacity? Total water vapor holding capacity. When it will be divided with this, it will give us the relative humidity. Now, the third factor is the cloudiness. The third factor is the cloudiness. What is cloudiness? It also decides the weather of the atmosphere. So, what is cloudiness? Cloudiness is that the clouds are produced due to the cooling of air as it rises up, and when air temperature gets reduced, the excess water vapor in the air condenses into liquid droplets, and when it will condense into liquid droplets, or you can say ice crystal, it will form clouds or fog. And you know, children, fog, what is fog? It refers to the cloud that almost touch the ground. In dense fog, the visibility range may be very minimum. That means it may be around 50 meter or so. Now the fourth one is the precipitation. What is precipitation? It is produced when the water droplets and crystal in clouds grow large enough to fall on the ground. So this is known as precipitation. When the droplets of water and the crystals in clouds grow and become large enough to fall on the ground, then it is known as precipitation. Now the fifth factor is the wind. It also determines the weather. Now the horizontal movement of air. The horizontal movement of air is known as wind, and it is named after the direction from which it is coming. For example, when the wind is coming from the northern areas, then it is known as northern wind. In most places near the ground, then you can say the wind usually averages from 8 km per hour to 24 km per hour. That is, the speed of the wind near the ground is generally 8 km per hour to 24 km per hour. Now, it can be very much higher during intense storms. The speed of the wind can be increased during the storms. Now, another point is, that is the sixth one is the atmospheric pressure. It also determines the weather. That is, sixth and last point is atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure. First of all we will know what is atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure is the force due to the weight of the air on a given surface. Suppose that this is a given surface, the force due to the weight of the air on a given surface when divided by the area of that surface, it will give you the atmospheric pressure. That is, force upon area. It is the atmospheric pressure. It is equal to the force upon area. The force of what? The force due to the weight of the air on a given surface. When divided by the area of that surface, then it will give you the atmospheric pressure. And one thing more, children, the falling pressure usually indicates that the storm is going to come, and the rising pressure indicates that the sky is going to remain clear. It is the indication. Now we will know about the different climates in India. What are the different climates in India? What are the different climates in India? In northern region of Himalayas, the climate is cold and moderately wet. Where? In the northern region of Himalayas. In the northern region of Himalayas, the type of the climate is cold and moderately wet. That means not very high nor low, it is moderately wet. Now in plains, this is the northern region of Himalayas, it is cold and moderately wet. And in plains, what happened? What type of climate is there? In the plains, it is moderately hot and wet. It is moderately hot and wet. It is moderately hot and wet. And in southern region, that is in south, what type of climate is there in India? It is very hot and wet. In south, it is very hot and wet. Western region of India, for example, Rajasthan, it is hot and dry. In Rajasthan, the climate is hot and dry. Rajasthan, it is hot and dry. Why in Rajasthan the climate is hot and dry? Because the temperature is high during most of the year. The temperature is high during most of the year. And in northeast India, the temperature is wet because of high rainfall in major parts of the year. That is in northeast part. In the northeast part, the climate is wet. Why it is wet? Because of high rainfall in major parts of the year. Now, what is climate and adaptation? What is climate and adaptation? So, some of the features and habit of the animals. Some of the features and habit of the animals help them to make some changes in it to survive in the surrounding. This is called adaptation. What is known as adaptation? Once again, let me repeat. Some of the features and habit of the animals make them changes in it. Help them to make changes in it. Why? To survive in the surrounding. This is known as adaptation. The tropical and the polar regions are the two regions of the earth which have severe climatic condition. The tropical and the polar regions are the two regions of the earth which have severe climatic conditions. Animals are adapted to these conditions in which they live. Animals are adapted to the condition in which they live. Now we will know more about adaptation, that it is the trait that makes an animal suited to its environment. It can be behavioral or structural trait. It can be behavioral or structural. So what are the behavioral adaptation? Children, moving in large groups help the animals to protect the members of the group from predators. That's why the moving in large group is known as behavioral adaptation, whereas many animals are having different changes in their structure. For example, the thick polar bear is having thick fur coat. Okay, this helped them to adapt themselves. So such type of changes in their body are known as structural adaptation. It helps them to protect it against the different climatic condition. So behavioral adaptation help them to move in group to protect them from the different members of the group, that is from predators. Whereas structural adaptation is the changes which help them to protect them from the various type of weather, adverse condition, that is against the cold weather, or you can say the hot weather. Such type of changes is known as structural adaptation. And adaptation usually occurs over a long period of time. Now we will talk about the adaptation of animals which is living in polar region as well as in tropical rainforest. First of all, we will know what is polar region. What is polar region and how the animals live in such regions? The polar regions are actually very cold throughout the year, with the temperature of minus 15 degrees Celsius to about 37 degrees Celsius. That is, the temperature variation in the temperature is about minus 15 degrees Celsius to minus 37 degrees Celsius. And the sun does not set at the poles for 6 months in a year. And what happens here? In the other 6 months, it does not rise. There is no sunset is there in 6 months. For 6 months, and no sunrise is there for about 6 months in polar region. The sun does not set at the poles for about 6 months, and there is no sunset also for about 6 months and no sunrise also for about 6 months. Then what are the areas or region which falls in such polar region? The areas or some countries which belong to the polar region are Canada, Greenland, Ireland, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Alaska, which is in USA, and Siberian region of Russia. So these are the areas, or these are the countries which lie in polar region. Now children, we will know that how the animals in the polar region are adapted to the extremely cold climate by having some special characteristics, especially in polar bears such as white fur, strong sense. We will learn this in details, that how the different animals are adapted to the extremely cold climate by having some special characteristics. Okay children?